Welcome, everyone. We're going to talk today about not listening to users and about sampling their experience. 3 years ago, I started working in Google Search. Before that, I worked in ads for 2.5 years. And we started getting more and more interested in what people want to know. Because what you saw in the video is what people actually do on Google. Of course, it's a parody, but this is what people actually do. We wanted to know what they want to know, with or without connection to Google. So a team came to me, and we started planning this. And since then, we've been doing a study that we call internally DIN, that stands for Daily Information Needs. And this has been going on since then in the US and in other countries around the world. What we pretty much ask our study participants is this question: what did you want to know recently? And we ask this question over and over again during a few days. And we ask a lot of people, we ask this question. We even have t-shirts for the DIN project internally at Google. Hi, my name is Sharon. I'm a Google Search user experience researcher. And today we're going to talk about a method called experience sampling. The problem, I want to start and talk a few minutes about the problem that we have. The problem is that people listen to users. What I call is to not listen to people's opinions or ask them any question about the future. Would you use something? Instead, I call for observing behavior. And I want to talk a little bit about why. I don't listen to users because of what I know about the psychology of the difference or the relationship between attitude and behavior. Attitude is what people say they do, and behavior is what they actually do. Here's one study. This was done in 1937. The researcher went into classrooms and asked students, would you cheat in an exam? And they answered. A few weeks after that, got back to the same students, and together with the teachers, they were giving these students an opportunity to cheat without them knowing that they're being tracked. And surprise, surprise, there was close to zero correlation between what people said about their future behavior and their actual behavior. This was 1937. That's 77 years ago. Here's something from 2012. Researchers in the UK, and this was done with dozens of thousands of people in the UK, went into public bathrooms in gas stations all over the country. And they asked people coming out of the bathroom, did you wash your hands after you finished your business? And 99% of people said yes. However, they also installed electronic recording devices inside the bathrooms, and they actually counted how many people washed their hands. And again, 32% of men and 64% of women really did wash their hands. Now, there are many reasons why this is happening. Lying is not one of them, okay? Usually, people are not intentionally lying about their behavior. We're just very bad at predicting it. Now, I want to take you into the startup world. I've been interviewing a lot of people in the startup world, and what I found is this. This is the main finding. Entrepreneurs have no time or budget to spend on learning from users. This is what I observed. And I interviewed 150 startup founders and VCs because I was so surprised by what I heard from startups. And I also talked with VCs, and I was even more depressed. But I want to share the other primary findings from these interviews. Only 12% of them knew what is user experience. And I was very generous. I asked them a direct question. In your opinion, what is the definition of user experience? And they gave me their answer. I was very generous in evaluating their responses, and even after this generosity, only 12% of them really defined it very well. Another finding, a startup idea is born from a founder's personal pain. 86% of startup founders start their startup because they had a problem, okay? Now, it's not necessarily a bad thing, it's just a finding. It could be bad if they're convinced that the entire world has this problem. In many cases, they are convinced that this is so. I also asked, what are other reasons that you started your startups? This is what I found. So personal pain, 86%, and user research is down there with 2%, meaning that they did research to identify user needs, and then they came up with an idea based on what they found. In between, spin-off, they started a company, and then pivoted or changed it completely or started a new company based on what they did. Requests from clients. Clients came to them and asked them for something, and they started a company, or they read market research reports. But the main result here is that it's solely based on personal pain. What I saw is that ideas are mostly for products or services. There was close to 0% of the people I interviewed who thought about a problem to solve, and started with this. Here's a company that did think about a problem before they started, and you can clearly see that. Who knows what this is, except for that it's a phone? Yeah. It's a jitterbug phone. Yeah. What's special about a jitterbug phone? It's for older people who have a hard time reading. I agree. It's even more than just hard time reading. They have big buttons here. It's not the size of the phone, but it's not far from it. It's really, really big. The font is really big. There's this cover here. All of this, can you think why they're doing this? Why are all these special features? What is the prior knowledge? A phone for complete novices. They don't know. They have no need or concept of modern smartphones. Yes. They have real physical needs for different types of interfaces. Why? I argue that there is, for every new product, there's prior knowledge that people apply to using this new product. What is the prior knowledge of elderly people when they use this? That's a problem. What is their knowledge? Push button landline. I would go even further back. This is their prior knowledge. Now let's compare these. Big fonts. And there's the thing, how many of you saw elderly people use a smartphone like this? You saw that? That's for a reason. That's the reason. Because it worked this way. It reached their mouth and ear. And this is what they did here. This cover here, this gray cover here, is to block the noise, exactly as you could have done with this. And there are other features that are just easier for people to use. It's not based on prior knowledge, but it's based on knowledge that they don't have. Everything here is yes/no questions. They dial the number, and then it asks them, call, and there are 2 yes/no buttons. So it's all very kind of conversational, so they don't need to understand, if you remember the buttons back then, send, end, or figure out different icons and what they mean. So this is based on fundamentally understanding a problem. These are the questions app developers and startup founders ask themselves. And these are great questions that they ask themselves. 97% ask, who are my customers? 95% ask a critical question, do people need my product? And 89% ask if the product is usable or not, and other questions. But this is the problem. The way people answer their great questions is extremely invalid and unreliable. And I want to share some of these answers. And some of them are funny, but they well represent the answers I got in 150 interviews. Who are my customers? The way they answer it is analytics and assumptive personas. They invent personas. Inventive personas are personas that are based on nothing, based on intuition, not on research. Analytics, they go through demographics, and this is how they know who their customers are. Do people need my product? Again, a critical question, and there are ways to answer it with research. This is how they answer it, and I'm not kidding. Is the product usable? We focus on UX. We really, 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 really focus on UX, meaning that it's good. We use it ourselves is another answer. We know if it's usable or not. We, the founders, we, the company. Is our product better than the competition? After a 10-minute argument that they have no competition and me saying that they do have competition without even knowing them, they agree and answer, we do things differently. We can't compare. And if we can compare, we compare feature lists. We look at the competition's website, and we see a long list of features. We compare it to ours, and then we know who's better. Is our product getting better? We improve it all the time, so yes. And do people want the product? Which is, by the way, a question I'm not really suggesting you ask, because what people want doesn't really matter. What matters is what they need, and it's always different. And yeah, I kid here, but this is what they do. They ask friends and family members. And friends and family members are very nice to you. They want you to succeed, but they're really biased. So that's a problem. All of this means one thing. That's a huge risk that they're taking. A huge risk. He's not going to catch him, right? And these startups develop products that nobody needs. And they're executing the wrong plan. You came here, I know you never do that, right? But just in case you do, I want to introduce you to experience sampling. Experience sampling is what's called a strategic research technique. And it's strategic because it's looking at uncovering user needs. It's not evaluating a product or a design that we currently have. So in the DIN project, what we did is this. We asked people the same question over and over again. What did you want to know recently? And we saw this. I can't share the data, but and the size doesn't really represent the data. But we have two parts of answers. One part is what people search on Google that they shared with us. And there's another part of what people want to know that Google can't give them today. And these are two examples. What they do on Google is things like, not just, of course, but Barack Obama height. And Google is very good with thousands of types of questions or queries such as that. But they also want to know, for example, what type of writer am I? Google can't give this to them today. So all of this, what people want to know that they can't do today, is an opportunity for us. And this is extremely indicative of user needs. Experience sampling is a research technique where you interrupt people's daily lives and ask them to note their experience about something. In our case, this was, what did you want to know recently? It's very good for identifying needs, for understanding what features people need, okay? Not comparing feature lists to competition, and for uncovering current pain points and delights. Here are the ingredients. This is what you need to do to run an experience sampling study, and it's not really hard. First, you need to very carefully think about the question that you're asking. It's really, really important. Again, in our example, we asked, what did you want to know recently? We also asked, this was the lead question, we also asked some more questions. For example, why? Because some answers we learned are not really telling us a lot, and I'm going to give a few examples later. We also asked people, for example, if a picture better explains your answer, take a picture and send it to us. And so on and so forth. We asked a few other questions. Were you with other people, or who needed the information, and so on and so forth. Generally speaking, we planned each notification to take about 1 minute to answer. Not about, up to 1 minute to answer. Because otherwise, people feel overwhelmed. We ask the question, I don't know, 5, 8 times a day. If it's a burden, they won't participate. Now, there's a question, how many times do I ask them? It depends on how many answers you want. So, and it depends on the activity that you're looking after, that you're looking at. So, for example, if it's what did you want to know recently, I claim that people want to know hundreds, maybe thousands of things during a typical day. We only ask the question 5 or 8 times. But if it's what was the reason you recently updated your website, that might not happen several times a day. So you need to kind of do some reverse mathematics and start with how many answers you want by the end of the study. Let's say you want 2,500 answers, and then you can start dividing. Let's say you have 100 participants, and then you decide that, okay, I'm going to send it to them 5 times a day for 5 days, then you get to 2,500. Of course, some of them will be garbage and things you don't understand, but this is how you calculate it. Carefully choose a medium. Text messaging, email, an app, a phone message. You can call them and ask them to call you and leave a message. These are all valid ways. The primary thing you need to think about in advance is how are you going to collect the data? Because if it's a text message that you then need to copy and paste into a spreadsheet, that's not going to work with 2,000 responses. So think of a good way to do that. Ask them to fill a form with 1 question or something like that, and then it goes into a spreadsheet. Or if you are more capable, you can use IFT, if you heard about it, and things like that. But think about it in advance. Don't find yourself copying and pasting 2,000 responses. We used Paco. Paco is an app, an Android app for sure. I'm not sure if there's an iOS version yet. I know they're working on it or worked on it. Publicly available. Paco stands for Personal Analytics Companion, and also the name of the dog of the developer. And it's an app that allows us to send notifications and manage this whole experience sampling process really easy. Decide how to collect the data in a spreadsheet or something like that. Now, participants. I mentioned 100 participants or participants in general. You need to carefully think about participants and what you're going to do with them. How many? We talked about that. Expectations. They need to know what you expect of them. You need to brief them, not too much. You don't want to give them examples of answers because this way you're only going to get these examples. Stay vague with regards to what you want them to share or how you want them to answer. But do explain that you expect them to answer each time and to answer all of the questions that you ask, and answer the question in a way that would make you understand what they mean. Practice. A couple of days before the study, send the question once and see what you get. And if there are participants who are not really giving you what you want, work with them on that. Give them an incentive. An incentive, at Google we pay, but, and we have money to pay. And I know a lot of small companies don't have the money to pay. To them, I say, incentive is not necessarily money. If you're a startup, a small startup, if you have an office, create a wall of fame of people who helped us with research. Put their names on it. Take a picture and send it to them. People love their name. That would be a great incentive. If you don't have an office, have a web page for that. The wall of fame of study participants who helped us on your site. The moment you're thinking about research in general and experience sampling specifically, because it involves a lot of participants, start recruiting them. Find them. Start finding them. All right, there are ways to do that. I'm not going to describe that now because it's going to take me a while. But start recruiting your participants as soon as possible. Recruiting, finding people to participate in research is the biggest bottleneck of research. Let's talk about the analysis. We talked about how we collect the data, who we do it with, and what you do with them. Let's talk a little bit about the analysis. So you need to decide on categories that you're going to classify the data. So imagine you're getting 2,000 responses. Now you need to do something with them. What you do is classify them into different categories. We had, in the Daily Information Needs study, we had 40+ categories. Before we even started, we defined with real specifics what are the categories and what are the options in each category. Let's take an example. So let's say this is our experience sampling question. What frustrated you the last time you went grocery shopping? So here are some categories. So location could be one category, where the frustration took place, and options might be the ones you see here: home, way to, from store, in car, parking lot, and at store. Another category would be close people, friends and family who might be involved, spouse, roommate, kids. Another one would be people at the store. So you look at each response and you classify it by these categories. I'm going to show you how you do that in a second. So people at the store could be other customers, cashier, store service personnel, and so on and so forth. And what was the issue? Finding items, understanding costs, and long lines. This is just an example. So what you do with it, you classify each and every response. Let's say this is one of the responses. Okay? I asked the question, what frustrated you in your recent grocery shopping experience? And this is one answer. A slow cashier combined with an elderly person who was in front of me on the line caused me to be late to pick up my son from school. All right? So how do you classify that? So the location is at the store. Close people are kids. People at the store are other customers and the cashier. And the issue was long lines. So you kind of disassemble each and every response into its components. As you do that, you learn that your predefined categories are not so good. Sometimes you need to merge them, sometimes you need to split them, sometimes you need to create new ones, sometimes you need to get rid of a few. That's fine, do that. Clean the data as you go. Dogs is an answer we got to the question, what did you want to know recently? We have no idea what dogs mean. So you need to clean this data. This is an answer to the frustration at the grocery store question. Has nothing to do with what you need, so clean that data. And generate what? She needs help, yes. Yes. And then you can generate frequency charts based on your classification. You're kind of reassembling the data in a meaningful way, so you know what happened most. So maybe if long lines is the main problem, maybe you need to do something about it. And you'll see that you'll very quickly identify themes and what you need to do. Another way of doing that is what's called eyeballing the data. Just reading the responses gives you a lot of information and understanding about what happened there. This is an example These are responses to this question: what was the reason you recently used a piece of paper to write something down? And this is how you very quickly eyeball the data into groups. Some people are making lists, some people are writing ideas, some people are sketching stuff. If you want to read more about this, you know almost nothing about experience sampling at this point. If you want to read more about it, this is a book I recommend. The last guy there is a TED speaker. He speaks about other things at TED. He speaks about flow. But this is a really good book to understand experience sampling. 1 second. So experience sampling is what's called reality mining. You mine the reality of your users. It helps you fall in love with a problem which is critical to solving a real problem that people care about. And I know this is the distribute sandbox, so let's make at least one connection here. If you solve a real problem people care about, I think it's very helpful in terms of distribution. So last thought. Don't just believe everything I say because I stand here. Try it out on your own. It's almost as easy as it sounds. Thank you.